Behind every flawless smile flashing across the red carpet, behind every carefully scripted interview and every perfectly tailored gown, there existed an invisible invitation to a parallel Hollywood, one the public was never meant to see, where the doors of hillside mansions didn't just open, they swallowed people whole into worlds where rules dissolved, where cameras were forbidden, and where reputations could shatter in seconds if secrets ever leaked. Those gleaming estates nestled in the Hollywood Hills weren't merely luxurious homes, they were fortresses where anything forbidden became permissible, where the studio made illusions of purity, decency, and moral perfection evaporated the moment the gates clicked shut. While the studios were busy selling fantasy to America, selling innocent smiles and wholesome images to millions, the stars themselves were living double lives, lives so risky, so volatile, that one whisper reaching the wrong columnist could end a career overnight. Invitations arrived in unmarked envelopes, delivered discreetly, carried quietly through back doors. Each one a silent reminder that once you entered these places, no rules applied and nothing that happened inside would ever leave those walls. This was the real Hollywood, the after-hours Hollywood, where once the film credits rolled and the spotlights dimmed, the most intoxicating, dangerous, and seductive show of all finally began. Gene Simmons arrived from England with angelic beauty, porcelain skin, and a voice so softly British it made American producers lose their composure. But adapting to Hollywood meant learning its dirtiest games, navigating its unspoken codes, and understanding that innocence wasn't a currency the industry valued. Her gatherings at her Pacific Palisades home began as proper tea parties arranged by her husband, the charming but notoriously unfaithful actor Stuart Granger, who saw every event as an opportunity to flirt, seduce, and conquer whoever caught his eye. It didn't take long for Gene to realize these polite gatherings were just the opening act. The tea grew colder, the champagne flowed hotter, and conversations shifted from elegance to propositions as the nights stretched deeper. Howard Hughes, powerful, unpredictable, and obsessed, stalked her relentlessly, showing up without warning, reminding her that as the head of RKO and the man who controlled her contract, he could invade her life whenever he chose. That contract became a golden cage, holding her hostage for years, unable to work freely while Hughes decided what she was allowed to be. During that strange limbo, those gatherings became her lifeline. Otto Preminger, Marlon Brando, Richard Burton drifting through her living room like ghosts of talent and temptation. Meanwhile, Granger's infidelity became part of the party scenery, his disappearances into upstairs rooms with younger actresses forcing Gene to plaster on a smile so convincing even she began to believe it. By the time their marriage disintegrated in 1960, the parties died with it. She married director Richard Brooks soon after, a man who despised Hollywood's social circus, and the wild gatherings faded into memory, buried so deeply she barely acknowledged them for the rest of her long life, passing away in 2010 with those nights sealed away as a secret chapter she refused to reopen. Janet Gaynor, Hollywood's first ever Best Actress winner in 1929, paid a lifelong price for her groundbreaking success. Her parties, electric and boundary-breaking, became the crossroads where stars, dancers, costume designers, and fringe artists collided to form a hidden sanctuary for people whose identities didn't fit the rigid moral codes of the era. Her marriage to MGM costume genius Adrian was a strategic alliance. He gained heterosexual respectability, and she gained protection from whispers about her true orientation. Their home became a refuge, a place where, behind locked doors, people could breathe freely, laugh without fear, love who they loved. Slipping into side rooms where new couples, often same-sex, disappeared to escape the suffocating Hays Code that punished authenticity with career destruction. Even her first marriage to Charles Farrell had been another carefully crafted studio illusion, both partners playing roles that kept their personal truth shielded from the public. When she married Adrian in 1939, the pattern repeated, and while their gatherings grew more discreet, they never lost their edge. But time moved forward, friends died, and by the time she passed in 1984 after a car accident, the stories of those daring electric nights died with that generation, whispers swallowed by loyalty and silence. Hollywood still unwilling to confront the full weight of its buried history. June Haver was sold to America as the next Betty Grable, a sunshine blonde darling of 20th Century Fox, but behind that sparkling exterior was a woman fractured between faith and fame, longing to escape an industry that drained her spirit. Her parties in the early 1950s were surreal performances where prayer books sat beside whiskey glasses and priests mingled with producers, while guests tried to understand whether they'd stepped into a spiritual retreat or a Hollywood fever dream. Fred MacMurray, who later married her, attended often, baffled by June's contradictory world of rosaries and risk. Her gatherings ended early, not because they were boring, but because June imposed strict, almost monastic curfews that stunned guests accustomed to sunrise endings. Her 8 months in a convent only deepened her inner conflict before she returned to Hollywood, claiming it was to care for her mother. Though everyone close to her knew the truth was darker, she couldn't outrun her demons, not even under vows of silence. In the years that followed, her gatherings became quieter, laden with a strange sense of penance, until her marriage to MacMurray transformed her home into a place so traditional it felt like she was acting in a long, slow redemption arc. When she died in 2005, obituaries praised her as a devoted wife and mother, omitting the turbulent nights when she desperately tried to be both saint and sinner, purity and temptation, angel and rebel, trapped in a war between who she was and who Hollywood demanded she be. Anne Rutherford, famous for playing Scarlett O'Hara's sweet sister in Gone with the Wind, was far bolder in real life than any role she ever portrayed. Her Hollywood apartment became a charged bohemian haven where blacklisted writers, politically radical directors, struggling musicians, and band creatives gathered during the fear-soaked McCarthy era. Her parties weren't glamorous, they were defiant. Cigarette smoke thickened the air, whispered conversations carried the weight of careers being destroyed, and every knock at the door made hearts skip with fear that federal agents might be listening. Anne welcomed those who had been shunned by the industry, giving them a place to feel human again, a place to speak freely in a world where freedom had become dangerous. She understood that Hollywood's glamorous exterior masked a machine that could crush you without hesitation, and instead of shrinking from that truth, she built a sanctuary for the crushed. Her apartment became a symbol of courage hidden beneath a soft Southern accent and perfect curls, a reminder that even within an industry driven by illusion, there were pockets of raw, unfiltered humanity fighting to survive. Evelyn had never feared the House Un-American Activities Committee, never trembled before the political storms that sent others scrambling into silence, because her gatherings were never just parties. They were declarations, acts of defiance, social revolutions disguised as evenings of laughter and perfume. And through it all, her second husband, the brilliant but self-destructive John Huston, would erupt into drunken rages so intense guests began placing bets on when the next explosion would shatter the room, turning Hollywood glamour into a battlefield long before the police arrived to restore order. Her 1977 memoir, Scarlett O'Hara's Younger Sister, peeled back the velvet curtains even further, exposing affairs that decades of gossip columnists never had the nerve or the evidence to print, including her torrid entanglement with legendary showman Mike Todd, who swaggered into her living room with suitcases filled with cash, and musician Artie Shaw, who rotated wives like instruments in an orchestra only he could conduct. As the 1960s dimmed the bright lights of her once flourishing career, Evelyn slipped away to Europe, where the parties became more elegant but just as wild. And when she returned in the 70s to publish memoirs that scorched reputations and rewrote whispered legends, she quietly disappeared from the public eye until her death in 2008 at 91, the last outspoken survivor of an era bold enough to confess its sins while still holding back its darkest secrets. Meanwhile, Rhonda Fleming, the queen of Technicolor, the woman whose fiery hair seemed almost supernatural, hosted dazzling Bel Air soirees in the 1950s, her charm so magnetic she became the shimmering centerpiece of every room. Though 6 marriages revealed a heart endlessly searching for something it could never quite hold. Tom Lane, her first husband, drowned his frustrations in alcohol and staged public scenes that embarrassed her, while Louis Morrill, the respectable doctor, offered stability so suffocatingly dull that guests frequently sneaked out early to save themselves from boredom, yet her evangelical conversion in the 60s didn't end her parties. It only changed the cast, replacing actors with preachers, cocktails with grape juice, and Hollywood flirtation with hymn-filled nights, where Rhonda still claimed the spotlight with immaculate poise. Her third husband, Italian actor Lang Jeffries, betrayed her openly, a cruelty everyone recognized except the woman who trusted him, and after their breakup she retreated into gatherings soaked in spiritual longing rather than champagne, until stuntman Bob Morgan, forever marked by an on-set accident that cost him a leg, brought out her compassion and inspired evenings devoted to charity instead of decadence. Rhonda lived until 2020, outlasting almost everyone from her era, her parties evolving from glamorous chaos to gentle prayer circles, but always revolving around her luminous presence. And then there was Faith Domergue, a woman whose entire Hollywood existence had been shaped and shattered by Howard Hughes, the eccentric billionaire who discovered her, obsessively sculpted her image, and hosted lavish parties where she served as his elegant centerpiece, smiling on command, pouring drinks, playing the perfect fantasy while he watched from the shadows, recording every detail like a collector, admiring his rarest possession. Her marriage to Argentine director Hugo Fregonese gave her a brief glimpse of independence, transforming Hughes-engineered gatherings into evenings with a heartbeat, evenings where guests interacted with the real Faith, not the puppet Hughes created. But after years of living as a man's obsession, she struggled to reclaim her own identity, especially as Hugo's Latin friends mingled uneasily with the lingering spirits of Hollywood's most powerful paranoiac. By the 1960s, her career fading like a dying spotlight, Faith drifted through Europe, hosting quieter, lonelier parties that revealed the desperation beneath the glamour, until she returned to California, faded into obscurity, and died in 1999, remembered by the world not for who she truly was, but as the Howard Hughes discovery who never escaped his shadow. And miles from Beverly Hills perfection, Marie Windsor, the noir femme fatale whose real life mirrored the smoky edges of the role she played, opened her modest Van Nuys home to stuntmen, B-movie directors, and unlucky writers, people the industry ignored, but who found in Marie a warmth, humor, and authenticity rare in a place built on illusion. Her yacht broker husband Jack Hupp brought a nautical wildness to their gatherings, arriving straight from the harbor, telling outrageous sea stories. And while elite Hollywood stars waited months for the perfect role, Marie worked constantly in low-budget films, building a career through relentless grit rather than gilded opportunity. Her parties were stripped of luxury but overflowing with genuine laughter, real friendships, and the kind of camaraderie that young Stanley Kubrick recognized instantly when he attended during the filming of The Killing, stunned by how honest and human her gatherings felt compared to the suffocating perfection of Beverly Hills soirees. Well into her 80s, she continued acting, continued hosting, continued filling rooms with life until her death in 2008, leaving behind memories treasured only by those humble enough to value sincerity over fame. Then came Adele Jurgens, the former chorus girl who carried her burlesque fire everywhere she went, transforming her Sherman Oaks home into a loud, unapologetic carnival of dancers, singers, and misfits Hollywood tried to pretend didn't exist. Her husband, Glenn Langan, star of low-budget sci-fi, embraced her chaotic creativity by hosting themed nights where guests arrived dressed as monsters and aliens. Cosplay before the world even had a name for it. Serious actors dismissed the events as tacky, but those who dared to attend always had more fun than at any pristine Beverly Hills gala. Because Adele understood something the elite never grasped, joy didn't need approval. Her modest film roles never gave her the stardom she dreamed of, but at home she was a queen, a host who made outsiders feel like royalty, even welcoming a young, unknown Marilyn Monroe, who joined the other hungry girls laughing through nights none of them knew would become Hollywood folklore. As roles dried up in the 60s, the parties faded too, and Adele lived out her remaining decades in quiet obscurity until her death in 2002, remembered only by the grateful souls who cherished her for embracing Hollywood's overlooked and undervalued. These 8 women, each navigating a world built on immaculate facades and carefully crafted illusions, hosted parties that exposed more of the real Hollywood, the flawed, desperate, electric Hollywood, than any studio-approved biography ever dared to reveal. Because beneath the shimmering gowns, beneath the powder and lipstick, beneath the images sculpted by publicists and protected by morality clauses, these women lived lives far messier, more human, and more unforgettable than the characters they portrayed on screen. So the next time you sit down to watch a classic film and admire the elegance, the precision, the perfection, remember that once the cameras stopped rolling, these women washed off their makeup, opened their doors, let the masks fall, and revealed truths the studio spent fortunes trying to hide. And while they believed no one was watching, someone always was, quietly taking notes, waiting for the moment history was finally ready to hear the stories Hollywood tried to erase.